Welcome back to Laughter in the Law, a podcast by Flexner Hauser Entry Law. I'm Jackie Hauser. I'm here today with one of my favorite people in the entire world, Miss Candace Seagroves.
It is so good to be here.
We were prepping for this in the back before we came up here, and Candace doesn't like any of my notes, and so this should be very exciting.
I intend to go off script.
Yeah, even though these are facts about her life and our life together, she is disagreeing with me wholeheartedly. So we'll see how this goes. I might have to go into cross-examination mode. We'll see. Candace, I know everything about your history, but tell folks how you came to be a lawyer.
So I had a desire to be in the legal field when I was at a young age. And so when I was old enough to drive and get a job, I ended up doing cold letters to law firms to become like a runner. And a runner, for those of you who may not be familiar, would be someone who would take documents to and from the courthouse, from the law firm to the courthouse to file them and clock them in and things of that nature. So I sent off letters to surrounding law firms in my hometown and then obtained a job almost right away at a local law firm there in my hometown. And I would travel from Wendell to Raleigh, where the courthouse was, to clock things in. And then my desire for the law kept growing. So I ended up staying kind of focused on that. And then I started the paralegal program at JCC, which is where I happened to meet you, though I had known about you through a mutual friend of ours beforehand.
We'll put a flag on that and come back to that.
And then ultimately, I obtained my paralegal degree, finished my undergraduate degree at Mount Olive, and then started law school at night. And so that's kind of been the trajectory all the way through.
Yeah. I think it's interesting. You mentioned starting off as a runner. I'm assuming that was like in high school. Right?
It was. I was 16 at the time.
I wonder now with electronic filings, does the job of runner still exist?
I don't think it does.
I don't think so either.
Most law firms have.
I mean, this wasn't pre-email.
It was, though, because, now we just did have, the new local rules say that service can all be done by email.
True.
So that's really kind of a new thing, too. Everything was either, courier delivered. We also didn't have e-signatures and we couldn't file copies. And so everything, sometimes it wasn't just about running things to the courthouse. It was about running things to a law firm to get signatures and to obtain the original copies and then preparing the packages. So I do think the practice of law has certainly advanced in that way. We've become much more tech savvy in that regard. So I'm not sure that it does. I think we certainly, within my own firm and you, I think we rely on courier services for certain things.
Yeah.
But when it comes to filing, I mean, at this point in North Carolina, almost every county is now fully on the e-file system.
Except for my little button down here in northeastern southeastern North Carolina.
It's coming, though.
It's coming. It is. It's upon us. We are training, and it is upon us, and we are active. So actively training. So we met at Johnston Community College back over in Smithfield, and I think initially I was teaching part-time and I was working as a paralegal and teaching at night. And then I became full-time. And I can't remember where in that process that you came in.
I can't either. I mean, you were certainly, and I was attending the program at night. So you were teaching at night.
Right.
Certainly that was, I still have, by the way, you taught multiple classes, but civil lit.
I taught them all.
Yes, that's true. Fair. That would be accurate. But I still have my civil lit notebook. I stumbled upon that here recently. Just for those listening, Jackie required all of our students to create the civil litigation notebook.
Oh, that notebook.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you meant your notes notebook. Yes, we did.
Gosh, no, I got rid of those.
Okay.
Yeah, those are way gone. But she required all of our students to prepare this civil litigation notebook. Now, it would be dated today because, things have changed.
It would probably be very humorous today as well.
It would be. I think it would be. Yeah. I should have brought that, actually. We could have shifted down memory lane.
Great show and tell.
Yeah. Well, nonetheless, I just wanted to point out that some of those tedious things she made us do, some of us students did them and kept them and utilized them from time to time. Now, I didn't actually utilize the notebook because I just would call you for the questions.
Right.
But, I could see how they would have been helpful to students who maybe didn't have that same level.
Yeah. If I'd have known you still had the notebook, whenever you called, I could have said, hey, refer to the section on discovery. Flip to that tab and let's look at that section. And I didn't know you still had the notebook.
I know. That would have probably been just wasted work.
Yeah.
It was so much easier to just answer the question, right?
I'll tell you, whenever I was teaching, I used to ask all the students in my class, who's working as a paralegal? Because a lot of times, because you could work as a paralegal, you could start your first day and poof, you're a paralegal. And that gives me a lot more respect for people who go to school to be a paralegal, even if you've already been told you're a paralegal. And so Candace was, of course, one of the students who raised her hand. She was working as a paralegal. And after I fished out who all the paralegals were in the class, I always told them that their work would be graded on a different scale than everyone else's work because I expected more from them. Mm-hmm. And even though I expected more from her, she was always an excellent student, and she was a star. And somehow or another, just latched on to my hitch and didn't go away. I mean, but
also accurate. Yeah.
Right. She was a great student. She did have a couple of problems. I mean, she had trouble getting out of the office at night, and I'm sure some of that may have been her boss's fault. Maybe. But
are you talking about me being late for class?
Perpetually.
Yeah, perpetually late. Yeah, right. So there was that. That's also fair. But my intentions were always in the right place. Right.
You were running. At least whenever you came in the door, you were still hustling. You weren't like sauntering in, like I got this. No, you were running.
I appreciate you noticing that.
Yeah. Because there were times whenever I didn't think students appreciated class start time, and I would lock the door.
Wow, I feel fortunate that did not happen to me. I was so gung-ho about doing well in the class. I think if I had shown up and the door had been locked, I would have been crushed.
I wasn't as adamant about that with night students because, like you, most of them just weren't coming from home. They just didn't pop out of their PJs and come to a night class. Most of them were. And this was before online classes.
Right.
This is whenever, if you wanted your degree, like I had to do, whenever I got my paralegal degree, you went at night. And you went 2, 3, sometimes 4 nights, but 2, 3 nights a week to get another class under your belt, So a lot more.
I think even when I was in school, I do think some online courses were starting to debut, but you still were required to do a certain number of classes in person. So even though there were online options available, I wouldn't have been able to take advantage of all of those. I would have still had to have traveled and commuted. And at that time, I was a good 30 minutes away from campus.
Yeah. Same here. I did not have any. I didn't get online classes till I started my master's degree, and they had just started, and I found I didn't like them. I just did not like the online experience because I'm the student that has question. Question. And so that was very difficult to communicate with my professor in an online class. I just personally didn't like him as a student. There were a couple of online classes I took that were just made for online, but for the most part, the substantive classes, which I think is the way that it should be, substantive classes should be in person. I think that's just
I would agree.
Common sense.
I think that really contributed to my ability to problem solve and to practically apply what it was I was learning to general practice.
Yeah. One of my favorite stories that you tell all the time, though, whenever you get the chance, is about the time that you missed your exam. And I don't even know what class that was.
Well, I just want to remind all the listeners how she talked about me being a stellar student and that I made very good grades. But there was an exam in one of the classes. I don't remember if it was civil. It was one of the classes. I'm not sure now which one it was. And I missed it, the window. And this, I think, was an online class, or it was part online. I'm not sure. It may have been a hybrid. I can't remember.
I don't know.
But either way, there was an exam scheduled, and I missed it. And I was really upset about that.
Yeah, that's a 0.
It was a 0. And we had already established I wasn't the type of student to get zeros.
Yeah.
So
and I'm not a type of teacher to bend the rules except for the not locking the door.
Yep. Oh, and you didn't bend the rule with me.
No, I did not.
Let's keep it clear. There was no bending of the rule, but I needed to explain myself as to why I had not, taken this exam and why, in fact, I was going to have the 0. And I remember just pouring my heart into this like really lengthy email, explaining the situation and like all of the things. And I read it probably 2 or 3 times to make sure, it really demonstrated, the position that I was taking on this particular issue.
Was this your first legal argument?
It probably was. Yeah, it probably was. I mean, look at how you were molding me even then. But I sent this passionate email to Professor Hauser, and what I got back was, I'll drop the lowest exam grade. I do that for everyone. That's it. Like nothing else. Not like, don't worry about it. Like, you'll be fine. It was just, I dropped the lowest exam grade. So that was cute. It was like, hey, heads up, just don't miss another one.
Right. Right.
And that did actually calm me down ever so slightly.
Yeah.
But, me being the overthinker that I am, I was like, well, what if I get, what if I miss another one because I, had an accident or any of the other things, you had made it clear we weren't going to be bending of the rules.
Yeah.
And so nonetheless, I'm really glad you held the line on me on that though, because I didn't have, it was an honest oversight, but there wasn't a justifiable reason as to why I did not.
Yeah.
But I did really practice my advocacy.
You did.
In that particular setting.
It was impressive if you'd have needed it, but you didn't need it. It was in the syllabus. It was set out in the syllabus. Everybody knew I dropped the lowest grade. So I dropped the lowest exam grade, not the lowest grade, the lowest exam grade. So that was it. So you finish up at JCC, you graduate, you do great. You go to Mount Olive. Is it University of Mount Olive?
It's now Mount Olive University.
Okay.
Back then, it was just Mount Olive College.
Okay.
So
and you did their bachelor's program.
I did, and same thing. It was not in a situation where almost all undergraduate degrees now have a full online course. That was not an option.
Yeah.
And I really wanted to start law school that following year, and I was short some credits, and I sat down with my advisor and said, hey, I intend to apply for law school in February, and so I need to take as many courses as I can, both semesters.
Yeah.
And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's like 16 is the maximum hours you can take without permission from the dean. And if you're going to take above those numbers of hours, you have to get special permission. So I sought special permission because I needed to take about 22 hours in both of those. And I remember them putting me on like a trial basis for that. But, where there's a will, there's a way. And I was determined to start law school that following year. And so I traveled to Mount Olive on campus a couple nights a week. And then I also went to Little Washington and to Durham.
Wow.
To do classes.
In-person classes.
In-person classes, also at night. So I've really been a night student forever.
Because your intent in getting your bachelor's degree was to get into law school.
That is correct.
You weren't just doing the bachelor's degree and saying, oh, yeah, I might go to law school. No, your intent was, I'm going to be applying.
It was. And I had actually taken the LSAT that preceding summer. So I was ready to go. I just needed to get that bachelor degree finished. And it worked out. So I graduated in the spring of that next year and had applied for law school that February and was accepted into the night program at North Carolina Central School of Law.
And tell people what the LSAT is.
So the LSAT is the entrance exam to qualify into law school, for lack of a better word. So certainly they take into account your GPAs and your academic history, but then they use this LSAT similar to other things, the MCAT for medical school, the LSAT for law school, this pre-entrance exam that's going to judge your ability, they say, on how to problem solve and to basically chart how well you may actually do once you're in law school. Yeah. Obviously, the higher the score, the greater your chances of getting accepted into law schools. The lower your score, allegedly, the less of a chance. I did fairly well. I don't know, looking back on the LSAT exam, that it really was all that quantifiable as to whether or not I would have done well. I don't know that would have been a good judge, but I mean, they've been using it for years. So
And now a lot of law schools are saying, oh, we're not even going to look at the LSAT.
Right. That they don't even take it into account.
Don't even take the exam. Just apply and send a check.
That's lots of law schools have turned into just send the checks.
They have.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I didn't understand whenever I was taking the LSAT, I just kept beating my head going, why is this question important? And it wasn't the question, it was the analysis and stuff. But still, why did I read a 3-page article and now I'm answering questions that aren't related to the article? What is that?
Right. I would agree. It was very
ambiguous.
There was a lot going on with the LSAT, I felt like. And I did some prep for the LSAT, not like I did for the bar exam, but I did do some prep for that.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say, looking back, I'm just like, I don't know. But you're right. The analysis was important.
Yeah.
You know, how we were going to problem solve was important. And so looking back, I do see that.
And so then you just continued that journey of night school and working during the day.
I did. So I was a night student for a really long time.
You've gotten good at it by now, so you pretty much can do it, right?
That's right. So I did. I continued on, started up that fall, and it's a 4-year program since I was doing it at night versus law school's typically 3 years.
And you went to Central.
I did.
Is that still the only night school in the state?
It is not. Campbell also does have a night program.
Okay.
It's a 5-year program.
But they did not have that at the time.
They did not have that at the time. And so if I was going to do a night program, Central was the only one that was going to offer me that. That's right.
That was it for the whole state.
I do believe that Charlotte School of Law, which has since been shut down, was operating at that time. But there was a lot of issues even then.
Yeah.
So I didn't even consider that to be an option. And plus that was Charlotte. That would not have been an option for me. I mean, I lived in Wendell at the time. So I only applied for North Carolina Central and I only applied for the night program. So as with probably any night program, it is competitive. A lot of people do have to work while they're working on their degree. At the time I applied, they were receiving about 987 applicants, and they would seat 50 people.
Wow. That's amazing.
So it's a very...
That's amazing you got in.
Well, the good Lord was looking out for that. That was part of the sovereign plan. Well, whoa. Let me just.
No, we
can
know
we
how that
read the record back about me being a good student and top of the class and all that? I feel like we're losing. You can't go off script.
Okay.
I can't. You can't. You must stay. But yeah, so I was very excited to get in. I recognized that was, no small feat. And
I didn't realize the night class was that small.
It really was even smaller. So by halfway through the first semester, as you know, a lot of people either voluntarily leave the program or after midterms are just...
Are voluntold.
Yes, they're voluntold that they are not going to be able to keep going. And so we dropped to about 32 students before we ever hit final exams. And then by the end of the first year, I was down to about 28 students.
Wow. Good.
So it was ended up being a very small class. And you have the year ahead of you in some of your classes because they split up. Basically, the reason it's 4 years is they take the first year's courses and divide it up over a 2-year time period.
Right.
And so you are with the class that's right ahead of you for some of your classes. So, but yeah, it was a great experience. I was very accustomed to doing it at night. I will say, I look back on it now. I mean, I would leave work at 5, go straight to Durham. And then I was in class until 9:30, and then I would leave and then come home. And then, there was work the next day and you still had to figure out, when you were going to do your lectures and your, preparations for your, they would call on you in law school. You had to be ready to brief a case.
Was it? It was always 3 nights a week.
It was always 3 nights a week.
And sometimes 4.
Sometimes 4. That's right.
And you got to do all your readings for all those classes, and got to be prepped. Got to be ready whenever they call on you to debate the case with the professor.
Right.
And go to work the next day and do that job, that thing that job thing that they want you to do.
Yes, that I was receiving a paycheck for.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Right.
That's just, I'm telling you, that's dedication. I mean, 3 years is horrible enough, but I did it 3 years and I only had a job 1 semester. I went 1 semester and said, here's my letter of resignation. I cannot work remotely anymore because this law school thing's killing me. And so I quit after one semester of working remotely 20 hours a week. And I mean, that's really impressive. I'm impressed with anyone who works during the day and goes to school at night. That's impressive.
I think some of that, though, did help that I had always done it at night.
Yeah.
Like I had and I was really still on the tail end of that. So it's not like I had taken a really intense long break where I had been out of school for a bit. I really had just kept it going. And so I think that certainly played a part. The fact that I had just become so accustomed to doing it. And there was certainly times that I just didn't sleep much.
Yeah.
It's funny that you talk about how it was hard to work and do it, though technically you kind of went to law school at night with me. It's like you really went to law school twice.
That was fun.
It wasn't it though? I know. I bet those were really special years for you.
Yeah.
For those listening at home, I would give her a play-by-play. See, she was certainly somebody that I looked up to, and she was a great friend. And then she was, my mentor. And really, she didn't even know she was all of those things, but I kind of just stuck her into that role. And then before you know it, I'm just calling her every day, talking about law school and talking about classes and talking about exams and how brutal it all was and how overwhelming it could all be at times. And I also had a desire to do really well.
Yeah.
And, and I remember you saying, like, Candace, you really need to be aiming to pass these things because at the end of the day, it's all about the bar exam, right?
Yeah.
Like you've got to be able to pass the bar. So, I think that would have been good advice if I could have kept myself from doing it, but I really wanted to score well.
Yeah.
So, but Jackie was really a lifesaver through all of law school. So she says that, but she was working full-time as a lawyer then and still having to deal with this basic part-time job of managing me in law school.
Yeah.
So kudos to you too, Jackie.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I know that, we talked some whenever you were doing your undergrad, and we talked about the Mount Olive program because I had been through that. I had taught in that as well. And then I had been through that. And then, I obviously did law school differently from you, but it's the same classes. You're still going to take civil lit, and you're still going to take real property, and you're still going to take estates. And so we certainly talked about that. And I think the conversation you're talking about as far as, you wanting to ace all your tests was after that first semester of your first you got your first exam back or something, and I think it may have been a C+. I don't know. But literally you would have thought that they had kicked you to the curb and said, don't come back. I'm like, it's just a matter of knowing how to pass the test. You don't have to make an A on every single test in law school. That's terrible advice that I would not tell my children, but it's just a matter of learn how to take the test and know where you missed your mark, and you'll get better. And you did. You got much better with that. So.
Yeah. And, just to kind of hit on that, I do think it's important to know, I did in many ways kind of follow through exactly how you did it. When I first met you, you were still working full-time as a paralegal and you were teaching JCC and you were doing all of that as well. And so, you were balancing quite a plate then. And then I was really driven by the fact that then you were working and then deciding, hey, I'm going to go back to law school and it doesn't matter. Because, I went to law school later in life too. So it's like it didn't matter, if you want to do it, like, let's do it. Because, both of us, I think, had to hit a point in our career where we were always going to be the one behind the scene doing the work without it actually being our work.
Right.
Or we were going to go to law school and, like, do the thing, that we were already doing. And so you really paved that path. And so you went through Mount Olive, finished up there. That was such a great program, and I was glad that I was able to do that as well. And then while I wasn't able to do law school during the day, just from a home life perspective, it was slightly different. But that really played a huge part. And so that was certainly pivotal for me and incredibly encouraging for me because it wasn't all that far removed between when you did that and when I started it.
Yeah.
So that was certainly an encouragement for me.
Yeah, I was, I've always been grateful to Mount Olive College. It was Mount Olive College whenever I went there. And they were a small little college, little liberal arts college, but they were so cutting edge with regard to adult learners and having Saturday morning classes. They would have sometimes if you took a class, you could take it at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning and take all 4 hours and then take a 12 o'clock class and take 4 hours. So you could be there on Saturday from 8 to 4 and take 2 of your classes and get them out of the way. And then, of course, they had their night classes and eventually their online classes. But I've always been impressed. And there's a lot of other little schools like that started off with those adult learner focus, which were perfect for folks like us. And like you, I always knew I wanted to go to law school. I just didn't think it was in the cards. And so it wasn't until, I was close to 40 that I realized, this can happen. I can actually do it. And I don't care that I'm almost 40. This can happen. And so, it was just, it was a dream come true to be able to do that and to be able, not to have to quit my job. And to be able to do my undergrad. And I chose to do law school the traditional way. I had never been a traditional student, and I just wanted, doggone it, to be a traditional student and to see what it was like to be at a college campus when the sun was up. What that campus looks like in the daytime.
Right.
So that was pretty cool. But yeah, I was always a few steps ahead of you saying, and this is what happens next.
You were, which was really great. And I think that still rings true today. I mean, even for, students who are going into law school now, I mean, we've both been out of law school quite a bit of time, but it doesn't matter. It could be a decade, 2 decades, 3. It doesn't make any difference.
Yeah.
Law school, for the most part, is still the exact same.
Yeah.
What you're learning in law school is still the exact same. By way of how you're going to prepare for the bar and then, what they're going to teach you and how they're going to do that. The methods might, alter slightly, but otherwise the substance is still there.
All right. Well, let's wrap up this part of our discussion. We're going to come back, though, and talk about your career. Now that you've gotten past the bar exam, we're going to talk about that a little bit because you've done some really interesting things. So we will wind up right here, come back and listen to the next part of Candace's interview on Laughter in the Law, where we talk about the law with a lighthearted twist.